all of the characteristics of life. And then we started to talk about them in detail, and we finished most of them. Yeah? Where is it supposed to be? Get another copy out of there. Yeah. All right, so we talked about reproduction. And we sort of got cut off at the end, so let's just review. All living things must have the possibility of reproduction. Otherwise, species would become extinct. We need to replace members of the species that die off in order to keep the species alive. And so, in general, reproduction is just creating new members of the species, creating new organisms. And we said there's two broad categories of reproduction: asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. And
we did the topic.
yeah, I'm just reviewing. So, asexual reproduction is a type of reproduction that happens mostly in simple living organisms, and basically they just copy themselves. Okay? It only involves one parent organism. And like when the example says a bacteria cell, it is split in half and it's reproduced. Now you have two bacteria. You had one, you end up with two. Only one parent was involved. Okay. But those two are just copies. They're basically identical to the original parent. You could do this with plants as well. If you take, say you take a tomato plant that was growing in your backyard. You cut off one little branch of it and plant that in soil. It'll start to grow roots and to become its own entire living organism, its own tomato plant. But there was just one tomato plant that it came from. It's basically a copy. It's going to have all the same characteristics of the original tomato plant. We would call it maybe a clone. Yeah?
So basically, like with the algae and stuff, it's not really a baby so much as another.
It's just another one, right? I wouldn't call it a baby. You're right. Okay. Some more complex organisms can reproduce asexually also, but mostly it's simple organisms. And in contrast, then in sexual reproduction, there are two parent organisms involved. And the two parent organisms combine genetic material to produce the offspring.
What do you mean by complex?
For example, sexual reproduction happens in animals, in plants, and some other organisms, some protists. So sort of more advanced organisms, most of them reproduce sexually. And so in animals, for example, males produce sperm cells, females produce egg cells, which combine and they form a new offspring. But it has some of the traits from the mother, some of the traits from the father. It's not a copy of either one. It has a mixture of characteristics from each of them. Okay? That's sexual reproduction. Two parents are involved, and the offspring have some variations, have differences. Okay? You know, if dogs reproduce and they have a litter of puppies, are they all the same puppies? No. There's variation there because they reproduce sexually. Okay? But a lot of times when we say sexual reproduction, we may think just of animals, but plants reproduce sexually also. Pollen, pollen that you might be allergic to, floats through the air in the spring, it covers your car. Pollen is the male reproductive cell from a plant. It floats through the air and it fertilizes a small egg cell in the plant. Okay? And those genes combine and you end up with offspring, with seeds. Okay? And they will reproduce sexually. There's going to be some variation there. So those are our two categories. We'll talk more about reproduction eventually, including human reproduction, but that's not until later in the year. So you got a while before we get there. Now, reproduction is necessary for the species to survive, but not necessary for one individual to survive. My two dogs at home, they've never reproduced, but are they alive?
Yes.
Yeah, they're still alive. So it's not necessarily that one individual has to reproduce to be alive, but the species as a whole has to be capable of reproduction in order for the species to remain. All right, and then the last one. After reproduction, we said all species are adapted to their environment. Now we have to be very careful when we phrase this one. Okay? What I don't want you to say is all individuals adapt to their environment. That's not what happens. If you take a desert snake and you bring it to Alaska, is it going to adapt to those conditions and be able to live in Alaska? No. Okay? That's not how adaptation works. But that species of snake are adapted to life in the desert. The polar bear is adapted to life in the Arctic. Okay? The fish is adapted to life in the ocean. So the species is adapted to whatever conditions it lives in. Doesn't mean it can adapt to a brand new environment, okay? But throughout a period of time, they've evolved, have certain traits, certain characteristics that allow them to survive. And we call those traits adaptation. Adaptation is a trait or a characteristic that helps an organism survive in its environment that it lives in. What animal is this? A beaver. That's what one actually looks like. What are some adaptations that beavers have? Some traits that they have that allow them to be successful in their environment. Is
Like
there?
construction workers, they actually build, like, with the wood that they chop with their teeth.
Okay, so you just said a couple things. They have teeth that they could cut down trees, which they later can use to build dams, a lodge in a pond. So those are behaviors they've adapted. It allows them to live in certain areas and create a living space. Haley?
Swimming while like they hold their breath because they're under when they hold their breath, so they have their thing so it's over and the water should come up.
Okay. So they can hold their breath for a longer period of time, so they can swim and they can reach into their home. That's another thing. They also build those homes above water. Yeah. Okay, they can swim. Okay, they're adapted to life in the water by being able to swim well.
With what she said, their lungs are big, so they hold more air.
They can hold lots of air.
They have to be strong to carry the water.
Okay, they have to be strong enough. Yeah, those are all adaptations, things that help beavers to survive and live the way that they do. So that's another one of the characteristics of life. All right, move on. Let's just look at this animal, this made-up animal.
This eagle.
So if you look at this creature, imagine if you saw this thing, you'd probably run away. But before you ran away and after you saw it, what are some adaptations that it has, and what do you think, how might they be useful for survival? Chloe?
Has wings.
Has wings. How would that be helpful for it?
It can fly.
Okay, why would that be good to fly?
Like if it's a predator is
Okay, might be able to fly to avoid predators. What else? Tommy?
It is a turtle shell to protect it from like maybe hard objects.
Okay, has a shell that protects many of its organs from damage. Okay, Olivia?
It has a sticky tail.
Spiky tail. What might that be an adaptation for? Killing prey. Okay, down.
It has razor sharp teeth and really sharp horns.
Okay, what would that help? How would that help it survive?
It could use its really sharp teeth to like break the teeth off and the horns to like kill them.
Okay, good. So, what like an example? I have a spiny tail, so that predators cannot attack it from behind. There's lots of things you could think about, but just write down a couple of those for this example. Those things are those are all adaptations. There are traits that it has that allows it to be successful, to stay alive. What's that? Yeah.
Wake up and digest it.
Okay. So let's move on now. So we talked about the characteristics of living things. Now we need to talk about, okay, so now we know something is alive if it is made of cells, if it can reproduce, if it's adapted to its environment, if it can obtain and use energy, if it grows, okay, if it responds. That's what makes something alive. Now this next section is, well, if something is alive, what does it need? What does it need to stay alive? Okay, and that's what this section is. All living things need certain things. First off, all living things need energy, a source of energy. Now, all energy, basically all energy on the earth, that really can be traced back to the sun. So let's say, what's for lunch today? Hamburger, cheeseburger. Does the energy, who's gonna eat a hamburger today or cheeseburger? All right. So are you gonna get some energy out of that after you eat it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Where did that energy, there's some energy in that cheeseburger. What is a cheeseburger made out of, CJ?
Meat and cheese.
What's that?
Meat and cheese.
Okay, meat and cheese. So the meat. Where does the meat come from, Haley?
A cow.
A cow. Where does the cow get its energy? Holly?
Grass.
From grass. Where does grass get its energy? Holly?
From the sun.
From the sun. So really, the energy you're going to get by eating that hamburger can be traced back to the sun. Hamburger came from the cow ate grass, grass got energy from the sun. How about the cheese? So you got the cheeseburger instead. What is cheese made out of?
Milk.
Milk. Where does milk come from? Israel? Cow. Where do cows get energy?
Grass.
Where does grass get energy?
Sun.
The sun. So basically anything, any food that you think about can be traced back to
You could have said
energy from the sun. What's that?
goat. You could have said goat.
Because there's goat milk. I don't think they put goat milk cheese on the school cheeseburgers though. Alright, so all energy really can be traced back to the sun. Plants are able to use that energy directly. Plants can absorb sunlight and absorb that energy and use it to make their own food. We cannot do that. If we could, first off we would be green. And second of all, we'd never have to eat. We could just go lay in the sun to get energy.
That'd be cool.
You can participate in it.
Yeah, watch people eat a fill all day.
And then animals eat the plants, and that's where they get their energy. Or some animals eat
Other animals.
other animals
Animals.
to get energy.
The next animals are called carnivores.
Carnivores or omnivores?
Omnivores?
Omnivores eat plants and I'm not an omnivore. I'm an herbivore.
You eat grass.
I don't eat.
Are you a vegetarian?
I'm vegetarian.
No, you're not.
Say it.
I kind of wanted to be a vegetarian.
I really am.
I tried going vegan for a day and I failed.
A
Like
day?
half an hour into it. It's like I need chocolate.
Yeah?
I am vegan and I'm vegetarian now,
Oh, okay.
but I don't think I can try.
CJ.
Once you start eating just nothing but that for a month or two, your stomach gets adapted to it and you can't eat it.
Yeah, my daughter, she was a vegan for 6 months.
And fail.
And then she eventually decided to stop, but yeah, you can get used to different things. Alright, so all living things must have a source of energy in the foods that they eat or themselves. Second, all living things must have
Water.
water. Water is extremely important. It's needed by our body for all of the chemical reactions that take place in our body. They need water.
Unless everything gets dry.
Okay, so we have to have water. it also moves things around our body. How does stuff get from one part of our body to another? Mainly through what? Zero?
Flowing like your blood and.
For our blood. And our blood is mainly made of water. So water is important as a part of our blood, or in other living things, to move stuff around. Also, plants need water in order to make their own food. And for photosynthesis, for them to use the sun's energy, they have to have water to do that. Which could you live longer without? Food or water?
Water.
You could live longer without water?
Food.
Food, definitely food. By far food.
Food, it's like.
Because me
You
and
could
my
live
Two
for
years without food.
well over a
Release.
month without eating food. You can't live more than
2 weeks.
5 or 6 days without drinking water. Okay, so
Or juice.
water is extremely important. Our bodies need a constant supply of water in order for us to stay alive. CJ?
When me and my mom climbed a mountain in the middle of the day in Arizona because my dad's so cold and wants to do everything
Okay.
that's not safe.
Yeah?
Yeah, so we did that and my mom passed out at the top of the mountain. My brother carried me down because I was passed
Oh
out.
man.
We both got dehydrated.
That's
My
not
mom
good.
had to get airlifted off of the mountain.
Oh really? Yeah, and if you do get dehydrated, you have to go to the hospital and they'll give you IV fluids and stuff. So yeah, water is extremely important. Also air. Air is important for living things. What do we need out of the air? We need oxygen out of the air. Some other organisms, though, use something else out of the air. You know what, Haley?
I just said it.
Bet you lost that. Hannah?
Carbon dioxide, but birds, like, this thing wouldn't be able to fly unless they had the secondary, lungs that birds have that collects helium instead.
Helium? I don't know about that one.
Well, it has a helium test of the air.
There's small amounts. All right, so oxygen is needed for respiration. Respiration, remember, is how our bodies get the energy from foods that we eat. We need oxygen. We can't live without oxygen. Okay?
It's not because
Carbon dioxide is what's needed for plants, for photosynthesis. So we need oxygen, animals need oxygen and other things. Plants need carbon dioxide and oxygen. So that's shown here in this picture, Mr. Arcurian the flowers, you can see. He
Did you
gives
draw
off
Mr. Arcurian?
carbon dioxide, no, that's the photograph. He gives off carbon dioxide that the plants can take in. The plants give off oxygen that Mr. Arcurian breathes.
Mr. Arcurian breathes in my way. I thought he had gills.
Mr. Arcuri was scooting a person in the room with his ruler.
Oh, really? That wasn't very nice, was it? All right, 2 more. It was scary, I know. It was a demonstration, so you're always going to remember response and stimulus. See it? Yeah?
He was like, here's an example, we're all looking up on the board and going.
That's probably okay. All right, living space. All living things, so in order to get these various things that need food, water, air, living things have to have a certain area, a certain part of the earth, a habitat that can provide them with those things. An area that can give them the food that they need and the water and the air. Okay?
You know what was scary for me yesterday? Being this close to Mr. Arcuri.
All right, and now sometimes certain species may have to struggle with another species to get what they need, to get the living space, or to get food or water. We call that competition. Okay? When 2 species are trying to get the same thing, they are competing for it. And it may be two plants growing in a very small area. Their roots are competing with each other to get nutrients and to get water. Okay, or you may have two bucks competing with each other to get mates or to get living space. You may have animals that defend their territory, fending off other animals to allow them to have the proper living space. So sometimes species compete for these things.
My deer eat roses, thorns,
Okay, the last thing that we need to talk about is proper temperature. So all organisms have certain range of temperatures that they can survive in, that they're adapted for. Okay? We talk about body temperature for animals in two categories. Some animals are what we call warm-blooded, and some are cold-blooded. You guys know what the difference is? Israel?
Blood temperature drops really low.
Which one?
The cold-blooded one, and then the warm-blooded is where their blood is like really hot. And
Okay.
the
You're
humidity.
pretty close here. Hannah, what are you gonna say?
Warm-blooded animals, they can change their blood temperature, or body
Yeah.
temperature with the condition, but cold-blooded animals can't.
You gotta switch. Warm-blooded animals have a constant body temperature.
And then cold-blooded. change.
Cold-blooded animals, their body temperature goes up and down depending on external conditions. What are we?
Warm-blooded.
We're warm-blooded. So, does anybody know what is a human's sort of normal average body temperature? Nate? 98.6 is sort of average. So if you're healthy, take your temperature. It's probably going to be around 98.6.
I had a night.
Now, sometimes you may have a fever, and your temperature may start to go up. It may go up to 99 or 100 or 101 or 102. Okay? And your body temperature is elevated because of some illness that you're fighting off. And our body can make many different adjustments to keep our body temperature at the right level. So right now your body temperature is 98.6. Let's say outside it's 98 today. You go outside and you're running around during recess. How does your body keep your temperature at 98.6 and it doesn't get overheated? Dana?
Or by sweating.
By sweating. Your body responds by you start to sweat. And when that sweat evaporates from your skin, it cools you down, keeping you at the proper temperature. Let's say you go outside today and it's 38 degrees out. What does your body do to keep your body temperature at that 98.6? What happens when you're cold out? Kristen? You shiver. Shivering, your muscles contracting very quickly actually warms up your body. Okay? And you also do different behaviors you may not even think about. If let's say tonight you go to bed, you leave your windows wide open, it's pretty cool at night. Okay? So you're really cold while you're sleeping. What kind of position do you sleep in? Olivia? A little ball. You're all like huddled up, right? Why do you do that? What's the adaptation? Ava?
To keep warm.
Keeps you warm. It keeps all of your body heat in nice and close. How about on a super hot day? You have no air conditioning in your room. It's like 98 degrees and you go to bed. How would you sleep on your bed? Farhan?
You might sleep off your pillow.
Okay, off your pillow, off your sheets. What about what position would your body take? Danielle? You might flip and try to get on the cool side, and what else? You just be like this, right? You're like, oh my God, it's so hot in here. What you're really doing, the reason you do that
It's because you're all spread out.
is because you spread out your body, giving you the most surface area to allow yourself to cool down and to release as much of that heat as possible. And so that's why you take that position. So our bodies have different ways of making these adjustments to keep our body temperature the same. Cold-blooded animals don't do that. Cold-blooded animal, when it gets cold out, their body temperature goes way down. When it's hot out, their body temperature goes way up. Okay? and their body temperature changes depending on conditions. Cold-blooded animals can't live in a wide variety of conditions. They can't live in the far cold areas of the world. Often they can't live in some of the hottest conditions on the
Like
world
the Sahara.
without having certain behaviors. So, warm-blooded animals, they maintain constant body temperature. We call this process of keeping conditions at the proper level homeostasis. Is keeping conditions constant. So your body keeping the right body temperature is called homeostasis. Okay, cold-blooded animals, their body temperature changes depending on the environment that they're in. So if it's cold out, their body temperature drops. If it's warm out, their body temperature goes up. So those are the 5 needs of living things. All living things need the proper temperature, they need a living space, they need a source of energy, they need water, and they need air. Any questions?
Nope.
Tommy?
If you guys are breathing to a change like the temperature, like if you did last